Thank you, Chair. It's always a pleasure to hear from the CRA that the wait time is short. I would like to move a motion, Chair, and the text is the following. Whereas on November 6, 2024, the Liberal government announced the closure of the Canadian subsidiary of the social network TikTok, that the committee invite to testify A, for 2 hours, François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, B, for 1 hour each, David Vigneault, former Director of CSIS, and to Philippe Dufresne, Privacy Commissioner of Canada, that the committee reports its observations and conclusions to the House of Commons. Okay, thank you, Mr. Villemure. The motion is in order. I just want to let the witnesses know, please remain in your seats for a second. We are going to go ahead and debate the motion. Do you have anything to say on that, Mr. Villemure? Well, recently we read in newspapers that the Minister of Innovation had initiated an investigation on TikTok, and we had the representative here at the committee, and we asked them questions, and we asked them whether the investigation had been completed, and it was recently completed. So the minister has issued a statement saying that the government has now banned TikTok in Canada, but Canadians can continue to use TikTok. It's a personal choice, but it's a bit of a paradox in my opinion. And there is, however, an aspect that is not illuminated at all. If TikTok is not in Canada, the Commissioner will not be able to play an oversight role because I believe that this motion is really within the realm of this committee, if you will. So I would like the committee to entertain this motion. Thank you. I have Mr. Caputo and then Ms. Shanahan.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I believe this would be considered a friendly amendment, which is just to add to Mr. Villemure's motion that such would occur prior to us breaking on December 17th, 2024.
Okay, we'll have to work that out. We'll try to get it in if we can. I don't know if we're going to add that to the motion because we've got a schedule ahead of us. Go ahead, Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you, Chair. And en fait, je vais procéder en français parce que.
I'll do this in French. I fully understand the rationale from Mr. Villemure. A decision such as this one is a big decision, of course. And I would advise all Canadians against having TikTok accounts. It's a Chinese company, and honestly, it's just common sense not to use it. We have very creative and capable people, and young people love TikTok. But I think that there is already a sufficient number of apps and platforms of sharing content and the like. All the craziness that you can find on these platforms these days. But unfortunately, it's a method of collecting information and data on Canadians. It's unbelievable. We, of course, talk about confidentiality. Mr. Chair, I am wondering whether we need the witnesses with us because I can see that you're also thinking the same thing. Well, I think we can take care of this motion rather quickly. Well, I have a couple of points to make, and we are running out of our allotted time. That's why. So I have a couple of points to make. And we're trying to protect people's privacy, their personal information on the one hand, but on the other, people are interested in these kinds of apps and platforms, and you end up putting in your personal information, not necessarily financial information, but personal information nonetheless, such as your name, your address, your contact information, what sorts of activities you're into, and your friend circles, etc. So I will be the first person to say and defend that all of these activities should be protected.
Yeah.
Point of
Oui.
order?
I got a point of order from Mr. Green there. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, I'm just wondering what the speakers list is, because given the time, I wouldn't want to subject these fine folks, our public servants, to what is likely to be a lengthy debate. And I'm, just reflecting on the
Are
fact
we
that.
expecting a lengthy debate on this?
No? What is the speakers list?
Okay, so we've got roughly till around 6 o'clock or so. I've got Ms. Khalid following Ms. Shanahan. I have I actually have a question of Mr. Hamilton that I'd like to ask, but
Okay.
at the end of it. But
Okay, fair enough.
anyways,
We'll wait till 6.
that's
I
where we're
tried.
at. Go ahead, Ms. Shanahan.
So, juste le point que c'est très important.
So I just want to make the point that all this information should be protected. And when the news broke, that was a question I had. So we are banning the company. They will no longer have offices in Canada, but Canadians will be able to keep using the platform. So when I heard that, I just said, hold on a second, because what means will we have to protect Canadians in their use of this platform? Maybe their information is going to be shared in unethical ways. When we look at the legislation, PEPIDA, and the instances and the responsibilities that they have, the privacy commissioner, for instance, they have a supervisory duty. And they can rectify situations and take action against TikTok if there are breaches, regardless of where the servers are located. And apparently they have locations in Singapore and elsewhere, and these are countries with which we have agreements and good relations. So I was reassured to hear that. Well, it also puts us in a difficult situation, Mr. Chair, because we have current and past members of the committee. I don't know about that side. But in any case, members who sat on the Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians and they were able to see classified information during their time there, and there were similar discussions over there at that committee too, and it was a question of national security, and that was clear, and that part of it was also public. There is also classified information. And it's very strict, if not stricter than what people working for the CRA accept. That is to say, that kind of information cannot be disclosed publicly as far as it has to do with national security. So I understand the motion. I understand the concerns of my colleague because I had the same concerns. Will Canadians and Quebecers be protected, even though TikTok is now banned and they will now no longer have offices in Canada? And the answer is yes, they are protected. There might be another question, and I will not even venture down that route in order not to bring questions of national security and intelligence before this committee, and because there's a more appropriate venue for that. So I think I will leave it at that. I hope that my colleague understands that it comes from a good place. We have already done a study on TikTok and other platforms because we all share the same concerns. We all want to know what powers we have as a government, or what powers do law enforcement agencies have through our legal system to supervise or look into potential abuses with regard to the information of Canadian citizens. That was my argument. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Was reading something. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Monsieur Villiers for moving this motion. As I'm sure all committee members, well, the permanent ones on here anyway, know how I feel about the issue of social media companies and how they operate with respect to protection of Canadians, with respect to privacy of Canadians. So in principle, I think this is a good study for our government and for parliamentarians to partake in. However, I'm not sure if this committee is the right place for this, and I'll make two very quick points on that. The first is that with the ICA, the decision that's come out from the Investment Canada Act on this, I think that the RCMP commissioner and the minister would be really limited in what they're able to say, given security clearance challenges and the issue of national security and intelligence in general that surrounds this entire issue. As my colleague Brenda Shanahan had said, when we're talking about China and the whole reason why this company is under investigation in the first place, I would think that the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians would be a better place to house this, where there would be more ability for the RCMP, for the minister to be more open and to be able to talk with full honesty and full paperwork on the table to say that this is what needs to happen, or that this is the circumstances surrounding the decision. The second point that I would make on this, Chair, is that I know that Mr. Villiers spoke about this, about PIPEDA and its jurisdiction. Now, I think that TikTok would still be subject to the Canadian privacy laws in Canada, regardless of where they operate, as long as there's that touch point for Canadians. So I'm not sure if that's accurate. That once they leave the country, that they would no longer be under Canadian jurisdiction, because there are a lot of companies that operate in Canada that don't have headquarters in Canada that are still bound by Canadian laws. And in this case, I think TikTok would definitely be bound by PIPEDA in the way that it operates in Canada, whether or not its office is located on Canadian soil or not. So those are the two quick points that I just wanted to make, Chair, and I realize that we are going a little bit over time. I just wanted to make a very quick amendment to the motion before we go to a vote. Now, the motion, it asks for Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne to appear. No problem with that. Part B of the motion, for 1 hour each, we're asking David Vigneault who's the former director of CSIS, to appear, and Philippe Dufresne, who's the privacy commissioner. I think that the former director of CSIS does not have a role to play in any of this. I think that it should be the current director of CSIS if we are going to invite them. That would be Mr. Rogers, Mr. Daniel Rogers, to appear. So I would move the amendment that we replace Mr. David Vigneault, former director of CSIS, with Mr. David Rogers, the current director of CSIS.
Amendment, if I understand it correctly, to replace David Vigneault with David Rogers. That's it.
To delete former.
Well, you mentioned Philip Dufresne too in there, so I just want to
Well,
make sure.
I was just reading out the motion, yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, I'm going to go to, j'allais, Monsieur Villemure, sur l'amendement, s'il vous plaît.
We'll go to Mr. Villemure on the amendment, please. Yes, I'd like to thank my colleague for their cooperation, and this made me think of something. It might be a good idea to invite David Vigneault, and the new director of CSIS together.
Madame Khalid,
Ms. Khaled?
je disais,
I was saying that I really like your idea, and maybe it might be a good idea that to invite David Vigneault and the new director, so that there is no gap between the testimonies, because the new director was not there when the investigation was going on. So both directors of CSIS, I'd be comfortable with that.
Is that a sub-amendment then, Chair?
Madame Khalid,
Ms. Khalid moved an amendment to replace Mr. Vigneault with Mr. Rogers. So if you want to move a sub-amendment, yes. Okay.
okay. So basically, it's to add Mr. Vigneault back, René? C'est ça?
avoir les deux.
Avoir les deux. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to accept that as a sub-amendment to accept the two of them. Ms. Shanahan, go ahead.
Juste, j'aimerais savoir
I just want to know why we're inviting the former director, because people can change roles, but they cannot disclose everything they did when they were in that post. The same regulations, the same laws, the same legislation, and the same restrictions will apply. Honestly, it's just repetition. It's redundant. That's why the two will be able to complement each other. We won't have a time gap in the narrative, if you will. That's the logic. But the decisions have just been made, and Mr. Rogers have been imposed for a while now. Well, I don't know who was imposed when. I have a sub-amendment from Mr. Villemure to invite both Mr. Vigneault and Mr. Rogers. That's the sub-amendment that's before us.
Then Ms. Khalid, go ahead. On the sub-amendment, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd like you to consider ruling the sub-amendment out of order because it goes against the core reason of the amendment. The core reason of the amendment is to delete the gentleman's name. You can't have a sub-amendment that would then add it back. So I would ask you, perhaps, Mr. Chair, to reconsider. I don't think it's in order.
I'm gonna accept it, Mr. Housefather. I mean, if it's up to the committee that they don't want that to occur, then they can certainly vote against it if they choose to. So I'm going to accept both of them together. I think it's a reasonable proposal that Mr. Villemure has put forward. So
Point of order.
What have I got now?
All right, I'm just going to go back to my
ahead.
original.
Yeah.
While it was nice in theory, they said they were going to be short. Clearly, that's not the case.
Yeah.
We have staff, that have, like senior level management that's sitting here.
I do appreciate that.
And so what I would propose to you, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
is that if it is amenable to the witnesses, that we be given the opportunity to provide, this is coming from somebody who lost their round of questions, by the way, but we be given the opportunity to provide them with questions in writing that they could respond to?
Fair enough.
Because this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
an unforeseeable future.
Yeah, so I'm going to accept that,
These guys.
Mr. Green. I'm going to dismiss the witnesses. I have a question, Mr. Hamilton, that I will be sending through to the clerk on behalf of the committee as well, so that I would like that responded to, and it's in relation to the CERB fraud, and I know that you've done investigations within the CRA. I want to make sure I want an answer as to what other investigations in what other departments have been done. That will be my question to you, sir, when I'm able to do that in writing. Okay, anyways, and then so now I've got on the sub amendment. I've got Ms. Khalid. Go ahead, and I have asked for more resources too. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair. You know what, I think I've made my points, and I will just add, in addition, just with respect to the ICA, I realized that I didn't clarify for anybody that was listening that the ICA refers to Investment Canada Act, and that the reason why I said that it would be a limited study was because it has a certain classification with respect to its clearance level. So the ICA is a specific classification of a document, and members of parliament, well, I mean, I do have my top secret security clearance. So
Others don't.
But others don't,
No.
and so I don't think that this is something that should be public with respect to any review or any discussion around those documents. So with that, I'll stop there, and then again reiterate my points that it is any current director of CSIS should be able to talk about anything that has happened in this history, and I don't think we need to bring in any former directors. I think the job would be done with the current director. It just doesn't make sense to bring somebody back. I'll park my comments there. Thanks, Chair.
I've got on the sub amendment still. Well, we've got the sub amendment on the floor. That's what we're discussing. So I'm going to look for unanimous consent. I've got no other speakers on the sub amendment. Do I have unanimous consent on the sub amendment? Okay. So on division. Oh, okay. So we're going to go to a vote on the sub amendment. I'm going to ask the clerk to take the vote.
Did you see on division?
Well, I thought I heard on division. I heard on division. Who said on division?
Vote.
Did you say on division, though?
No, I'm asking for a recorded vote.
I'm asking you, did you say on division? That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Did you? Yes.
In error, I said on division.
In error, okay. That's fine. Let's go to a recorded vote.
So the vote is on the sub-amendment moved by Mr. Vilmer to the amendment moved by Ms. Khalid. Mr. Baines.
No.
Mr. Maloney.
No.
Mr. Housefather.
No.
Ms. Khalid. Ms. Shanahan.
No.
Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Mr. Soroka.
Yes.
Mr. Chambers. Monsieur Villemur. Mr. Green.
Je vote pour la motion.
Yeas 5, nays 5.
Okay, I'm going to vote in favor of it as well. So that means that the sub-amendment will pass. So I'm going to go straight to the motion as amended with the amendments. So the amendment now includes Mr. Vigneault and Mr. Rogers, which means on the amendment, do I have consensus on the amendment? Recorded division. Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
The vote is on the amendment as amended. Mr. Baines.
Yes.
Mr. Maloney,
Yes.
Mr. Hosfather,
Yes.
Ms. Khalid, Ms. Shanahan.
So we're on the, just so that we're clear, we're on the amendment, right? The amendment, which includes Mr. Vigneault and Mr. Rogers. That's where we're at right now, because that was approved in the sub-amendment. Okay? So that's where we're at. So if you're voting yes, you're voting for Mr. Rogers and Mr. Vigneault to come. And if you're voting no, then you're voting against the amendment as amended. Okay? That's where we're at.
Thank you for the clarity.
Back to the vote, Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
Mr. Soroka,
Yes.
Mr. Chambers,
Yes.
Monsieur Villemur,
Oui.
Mr. Green. Yeas 10. Oui 10.
So the amendment passes. Now we are on the main motion as amended. I have no speakers, so I'm going to call the vote. Madam Clerk, I suspect that we want a recorded vote? Okay, okay, go ahead.
The vote is on the motion by Mr. Villemur as amended. Mr. Baines,
Yes.
Mr. Maloney,
Yes.
Mr. Hosfather,
Yes.
Ms. Khalid, Ms. Shanahan, Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
Mr. Soroka,
Yes.
Mr. Chambers,
Oui.
Monsieur Villemur,
Oui.
Mr. Green. Yeas 10 pour 10.
Okay, so the motion as amended passes. I have no other business for the committee. I am going to adjourn the meeting. Have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.